As Onizuka beats up a pair of goons that try to rob him, Ryuji pulls up in his motorcycle and reminds him that he's late for school, so he rushes away after taking some money from the thugs. While driving, Onizuka starts fantasizing about getting to teach young pretty girls and gets pulled over for overspeeding. He finally reaches the school and happily looks at the schoolgirls in miniskirts. He runs into a girl from the volleyball club whose legs are almost entirely exposed and perversely heads over to the staff room where the principal gives him and 3 other student teachers a brief rundown. The homeroom teacher takes him to his class, which he is shocked to see is filled with weird-looking, delinquent boys who are loudly talking to each other. He takes a look around and sees only 3 ugly-looking girls wearing long skirts. Onizuka tries to introduce himself, but the students start to annoy him and dare him to hit them so that they can report him to the Board of Education. The next day, he's teaching them about famous quotes when the girl from the volleyball club raises her hand and perfectly answers his question. As he excitedly makes his way to her, she thanks him and introduces herself as Nana Mizuki. At night, as he's walking home, he encounters Nana, who tearfully asks to stay at his place for the night since she ran away from her parents. Taken over by his perverse thoughts, he takes her home where she makes him sukiyaki while telling him about her family. She suddenly embraces him and starts stripping off her clothes when 3 of the delinquents from Onizuka's class take a picture of them from their camera and tell him to bring them 1,000,000 yen within a week. As the 3 boys are happily joking about him, a huge gang surrounds and starts threatening them. When Onizuka steps forward, the gang leader starts to ask forgiveness from him. Thinking that they're saved, they start making their way to Onizuka, who tells the other gang to not touch them because they're his prey. After beating the students up, he repeatedly dunks them in the nearby lake for playing games with him. Later, he goes drinking with Ryuji and sadly wonders if there's any chance that they'll let him stay as a teacher. When he goes to the school, he is shocked to see that the delinquents have, out of fear of him, begun to slowly improve and are cleaning the school. After the day is over, they bow him out of the school and his colleague congratulates him for taming the students so well. He goes to his bike and sees Nana sitting on it. He tries to get her to leave, but she tells him that if he comes home with her, she'll give him a fresh pair of her panties, so he reluctantly obeys. Surprised by the size of her house and wealth, he sees a plate of expensive sushi and is about to eat it when she throws it into the bin with a stoned look. She turns around and asks him to go for a drive with her. While on the road, she asks him if she can stay at house for the night, and when he doesn't answer, tries to jump from the bike but gets saved by him. They stop on a sidewalk, and she sadly tells him that her father and mother have been distant with each other for a long time and are separated by a thick wall between their separate rooms. After hearing this, Onizuka tells her to go home and drives away. Later, as she's silently sitting with her parents, Onizuka enters their house with a large war hammer and struts up the stairs. Ignoring their cries of protest, he enters Nana's parents' room and asks her if it's the one. When she confirms, he starts beating the wall with the hammer and breaks a large hole in it. Once done, he silently leaves. As Nana's parents hurriedly call the police, she happily looks at the gaping hole. A few months later, when the term has ended, Onizuka packs up his things and decides to come back as a permanent teacher when the school year restarts. As Onizuka is freely smoking a cigarette at Ryuji's store, he is reminded about the teacher's test. When he questioningly asks him about it, Ryuji tells him that potential teachers need to take a test to enter the profession. Since Onizuka used a stand-in for his graduation, he depressingly goes to drink himself into oblivion, but Ryuji hands him a recommendation letter using which you only need to pass an interview. While on the bus the next day, Onizuka sees a pretty woman getting groped by an old pervert, so he punches the creep and throws him out of the bus before the woman thanks him for his help. As he sits down near the vice principal's office at the school, the same woman takes a seat beside him and introduces herself as Fiatsuki. He chats with her for a bit before his name is called. As he enters the office, he sees that the old pervert from the bus is the vice principal. The man vengefully looks at Onizuka and begins insulting him and his resume in front of the other board members before saying that they don't need trash like him in their school and telling him to leave. He miserably walks out of the room and goes to the student store where he buys a bottle of milk coffee before telling the woman working there that at school all his teachers called him trash and he didn't want that to happen with other students, which is why he wanted to become a teacher in the first place. Suddenly, 3 rowdy-looking boys charge into the hallway and get ready to beat the vice principal, but Onizuka stands in front of him thinking that his chances of getting the job could increase. But when the boys angrily tell him that the principal always kept calling them trash and useless, Onizuka slams him on the ground and leaves with the boys, saying that he did the job for them. Later, Fuyatsuki goes to Ryuji and tells him that if Onizuka is able to make it to the interview by 6 p.m., he'll have a chance at becoming a teacher, so he calls Onizuka, who has undertaken a job as a truck driver and is on his way to Omori to tell him about the interview. Realizing he still has a chance, Onizuka turns the vehicle around at once and speeds off towards the school. After avoiding the traffic police and many other roadblocks, he finally reaches the school but sees that everyone is already gone. Suddenly, the woman from the school store approaches him and says that she's been waiting for him. She turns out to be the chairperson in reality and takes him to her office before instantly appointing him and asking him to fix the problems that the Holy Forest Academy has been going through recently with his methods, to which he defiantly agrees. Surprised, he walks out the school and meets Ryuji and Fuyatsuki, who it turns was also appointed. As the vice principal is lovingly looking at his white cresta, Onizuka pulls over with his large truck, almost hitting both of them, and gets his pile of stuff to go with the chairperson to his room, which turns out to be the small penthouse on the roof. He drags along a timid-looking student who's forced to carry the entire pile, while Onizuka carries a single pillow. While he's cursing the chairwoman for baiting him, the student opens his gaming machine and tells him that he's beaten one of the games completely. Meanwhile, the vice principal tries to get the chairperson to change her mind, but she doesn't budge, and he heads out disappointingly before happily realizing that she's intending to dump that class on him. At the school assembly, the vice principal introduces Onizuka and announces that he'll be teaching the grade 3 to 4 for middle school, which comes as a shock since he wanted to teach high school students from the start. Seeing his dyed hair and pierced ears, the student starts gossiping whether he's actually a real teacher. Hearing this, he angrily takes his teaching certificate out of his pocket, but accidentally rips it apart, making the students laugh even harder at him. After returning to the staff room, the vice principal starts angrily yelling at him for making a joke out of all of them in front of the entire school, but when Onizuka returns to his seat, he takes out his earplugs and tells Fuyatsuki to not worry about him. As he heads into his class, he makes sure to put up a rowdy look, but the students sit there silently until he talks to them and talk to him in stiff one-liners. Later, the teachers gather under the cherry blossom trees for a start-of-term dinner, and Fuyatsuki worriedly shows him 2 pictures of the former teacher of class 3 to 4. The one that was taken before she became the teacher for class 3 to 4 shows her looking normal and beautiful, but the one showing her condition after it show her having evolved into an ugly-looking fat version of herself who's acquired bulimia via stress. Later, at night, as he's trying to sleep, he hears a few weird noises. When he goes out to interrogate, he stops a panty thief from stealing a large pile of female underwear and a young couple from intensely making love in the school building. Once done, he heads back and sees that the door to the rooftop is open and finds the student from before, Yoshikawa, standing on the edge with bruises and marks all over his face. He tells him that he can't bear it anymore and is about to jump, but Onizuka grabs him and both of them fall on the roof of the vice principal's cresta. Onizuka takes him to his house and tells him that the reason behind him becoming a teacher was that he wanted to have fun. He borrows a lot of games from him and leaves the room. As Yoshikawa is looking at him from the window, he asks if he can come to Onizuka's room sometime, and he warmly responds that he can visit him whenever he wants. Before leaving, Onizuka also tells him that he's going to make school interesting for him. As Onizuka gets ready and leaves for his classes, he sees a small crowd standing in front of the notice board. He goes to see what it is and is shocked to see himself doing erotic acts on a large poster pinned there. Disgusted by his apparent true personality, Fuyatsuki slaps him and runs away. Shocked and confused, Onizuka notices a scar on the butt of the man in the picture, so he takes off his own pants to show the onlookers that it's Mayhem, but only manages to drive them away even more. He returns to the staff room and worriedly looks at the poster. His colleague comes by and says that he might have subconsciously done such erotic acts. While the vice principal is walking by, he jumps on Onizuka and tries to strangle him for breaking his beautiful cresta, but the other teacher manages to hold him off. As the students of 3 to 4 are happily discussing their prank and wondering how long it will take for him to break, Onizuka tiredly enters the class and sees another poster of him naked, but this time standing with the vice principal also naked. As he starts to wonder how the erotic relationship could have happened, he goes mad with disbelief, angrily hammers his fists on the board, and leaves the classroom while shouting loudly. Later, as the poster of him and Onizuka reaches him, he slowly starts to spiral into depression, thinking of how his wife and daughter haven't been talking with him recently, how his life has slowly become a dull slog. The cresta was the thing that would relieve him from his worries, but that was also taken away by Onizuka, because of whom all his problems started again. Later, Onizuka tries to convince Fuyotsuki that it's all a misunderstanding, but she seems a bit reluctant and says that whatever his private hobbies are is his personal business. The next day, he once again sees people standing in front of the notice board, which this time shows him leaving a love hotel with a female prostitute. Fuyotsuki slaps him once again and runs away, this time with tears in her eyes. Onizuka depressingly goes to sit on the rooftop, wondering whether he has a split personality or if his soul leaves his body for some time every night, but Yoshikawa tells him that it's one of his classmates who's doctoring the real images and inserting his face over them, but gets stopped by Onizuka, who tells him that he wouldn't trust anyone who ratted out one of their classmates and says that he'll make them pay. Fuyotsuki also realizes her mistake and apologizes to him before saying that she would like to make it up to him by buying him dinner, to which he happily agrees. While the boys are gleefully looking over Kikuchi's shoulder at the computer screen, they happily tell each other that this will be the final straw and that he won't be able to stay at the school after they've distributed the image, but Onizuka suddenly arrives and tells them to show him the picture as well. Stunned, the boys fall backwards into each other, and he takes Kikuchi outside, saying that he's going to make him pay. Outside, Kikuchi calmly says that Onizuka can't use violence or else he'll be kicked out from the school, but Onizuka approaches him unfazed before asking him to composite lewd pictures with pornographic magazines. He decides on a fee of 3,000 yen for Kikuchi, asks him to deliver the pictures in a week, and happily walks away. The vice principal happily tells his wife and daughter that because of his insurance, a brand new cresta was sent to him by the company, and asks if they'd like to go to the hot springs, but they deny him without even thinking, so he agrees to buy them both gifts if they come with him to this road trip, and they both happily agree. At class, Onizuka tells his students a story about a man who bought a box of shumai on his way home. He felt weird and saw that one of the shumai was missing. He walked a bit farther and this time saw that there were 2 less than the total number in the box. When he turned a corner, he checked the box and saw that 3 of the shumai were missing. Now scared, the man closed and a few seconds later opened the box once again and saw that all of the shumai were now stuck to the ceiling of the box. As the class starts laughing at the ridiculous tale, Onizuka dismisses them and heads outside. Once he's gone, some of the few Onizuka opposers started telling their classmates to stop laughing at his jokes. They then round on Kikuchi and asks him to create more of the doctored images, but he refuses point blank. As one of the girls sees Yoshikawa laughing at them, her friend tells her that she's heard that he's close to Onizuka. Later, as Fuyotsuki is watching Onizuka play games, she asks him how his classes are going, and he carelessly responds that they're going normal as usual. He asks her if she wants to play, but she refuses, saying that she's not sure how to, so he takes her hands in his arms and starts teaching her the controls while slowly smelling the aroma of her hair. Yoshikawa enters the room, and he and Onizuka begin playing the game again while Fuyotsuki quietly gets up and leaves. Later, as he's going back, the girls from Yoshikawa's class catch and strip him naked and start bullying and abusing his body. Later, Onizuka calls Kikuchi to deliver the pictures, and they decide to meet at night near the school. As he's going to the spot thinking of how he can get Kikuchi to make a doctored image with Fuyotsuki's face, his eyes fall on a morose-looking Yoshikawa at the rooftop who slowly jumps down. Panicking, Onizuka jumps up the cresta and catches Yoshikawa as both of them fall onto the car's roof. As soon as they get out of it, the vehicle bursts into flames and he starts lecturing Yoshikawa for always doing these stupid things before saying that they'll get revenge for him. Later, as the girls are sitting at a karaoke club, wickedly going through all the shameful pictures of Yoshikawa, Onizuka enters and blocks the door and asks Yoshikawa to come inside and say that it was them who bullied him. When they do, Onizuka restrains and ties them all up. He takes a stick with a large glove on its end and starts spanking the girls on their butts as punishment before pulling up their skirts to reveal their underwear and taking a picture of them all standing side by side with their panties visible. Once done, he leaves the rest of the punishment to Yoshikawa and goes outside. While he's walking, Yoshikawa catches up with him and says that he left the camera with them intentionally for their sakes. They decide to take out ramen, but Onizuka later tells Yoshikawa that the ramen he bought sucked. Later, an old-looking woman enters the school hallway and asks Fuyotsuki if the chairperson is present before introducing herself as the president of the PTA of the school. Yumhara, she says that she heard that a teacher named Onizuka performed some shameless activities on her daughter, which is why she's here. And that wraps up another thrilling recap, but the adventure doesn't end here. Prepare to be shocked by our second recap's unexpected plot twists and witness the evolution of your favorite characters. Subscribe to our channel if you want more twists, turns, and heart-pounding stories. Stay tuned for our next recap.